Students, we are now moving to lesson 6, where we are going to look at chapter 5, which is conclusion and recommendations. Then I will briefly look at how we do referencing and how we do the appendices and what have you. So this is what we are going to cover in this particular lesson today. So chapter 5, which is conclusion and recommendations. So what do we mean when we talk about conclusions? This section should focus on conclusions based on the findings and organized by objective as highlighted below in 5.2, meaning the write-up should be in prose. Yes, you are concluding according to the summary of the objectives and the rest, but you are doing it in a prose form, meaning don't bullet. Do it in a paragraphic way. So it is advisable to state, for example, you could say this study has resulted in 3 main conclusions as follows. Firstly, based on the findings that was XYZ, it is logical to conclude that this, and that. Secondly, this, and that. Thirdly, this, and that. So what I'm saying is this: when you are making your conclusion, you are making your conclusion based on what? You are making conclusion based on a given result that has been interpreted in the chapter 4 of your thesis. So don't just make general conclusion. No, your conclusion should be based on the results, and these results are as a result of the objectives that were set clearly in chapter 1. Then, so what I'm saying is that this conclusion chapter, first of all, you introduce it. That is 5.1, you introduce the chapter, meaning you tell the reader what you will cover in this particular chapter. Then you move to 5.2, where you talk about the conclusion. In some other cases, you find maybe you might do some summary before you do the conclusion, but our assumption here is in chapter 4, you have done enough. You have presented your data, you have interpreted it. So when you are making your conclusion, you are making your conclusion based on your findings. That is it. So after you have done that, then you move to 5.3, where you will be looking at recommendations. So you make recommendations according to your conclusion. Because when you have made a conclusion, then you can draw your recommendation from the conclusion. So what are we saying under recommendations? We are saying that recommendations should be linked to findings and conclusions. They should be linked. We should see the flow. We should see the relationship. We should see the linkage. Then I'm also saying they should also be dichotomized into those related to policy, practice, and those related to further research. So I'm saying that when it comes to recommendations, we have 2 types of recommendations: policy and practice recommendations, or they are just 3 anyway: policy recommendations, practice recommendation, and those we refer to as further research recommendations. So for quantitative studies, the recommendations should be based on negative findings with the aim of soliciting viable interventions. Otherwise, qualitative studies may include positive findings that are key information on good practices and lessons that may need scaling up. So what we are saying is this: from your conclusion, it could be positive or negative. When it is positive, Then you recommend what should be done to enhance the good results. And if it is negative, you also suggest or recommend for an intervention that will bring about the solution or will mitigate against that particular problem. So all recommendations should be numbered using Roman numerals. They should be realistic and directly linked to the research findings as per the objectives cited, as well as related conclusions already presented in the study. Recommendations are never to be presented as a shopping list or list of wishful thinking that reflects on all the things that the researcher has always dreamed of seeing implemented by everybody and therefore by nobody at the end. So it is very important that recommendations are made that way. So let us look at each recommendation in particular. Like when we look at 5.3.1 policy recommendations. Here, this must be directly linked to, number one, existing policy that needs enhancement. Yeah. Then, number two, non-existent policies that need to be formulated. Meaning if there are no policies, because policies are formulated to solve problems that exist in our society. So sometimes we may have a problem in the society and we have a policy already existing, but this policy is weak. So your recommendation could be this policy must be enhanced. But if at all there is a problem in our society and there's no policy in place that is meant to mitigate against it, then your recommendation would be the formulation or development of a new policy. Number three, practical interventions. Maybe, now this is about practice. So I'm saying that you can also recommend for a practical interventions, which may be presented in this section under specific policy consideration. So that's all about policy recommendations. When we move to 5.3.2, which is a recommendation for further research, this should be related to the concluded study, not some wishful or wild thinking from nowhere. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that for further research, during your research, your data collection, or even during your data collection, which is both secondary and primary data, you would have realized that there are some gaps in terms of areas of researches. There are areas that need to be researched on related to what you are doing. But you see, it is important to suggest them for future researchers. They can take advantage of that and come in to do research on those which you have recommended or rather suggested that those are areas that need some research to be done. So that's the end of chapter 5, which is conclusion and recommendations. Now I want to move to referencing. I have realized from practice that many students, they try to cook up a reference list, which is very unfortunate. At this moment, you just have to know how you do it automatically. Maybe if you are using APA style, you see it comes in automatically from citation, then you move it to bibliography, and it will automatically write it correctly and arrange everything in alphabetical order. So what am I saying about references? About references, I'm saying that references come at the end of the main body. So the list starts on a fresh page. That is it. The subsection is not numbered in the way other sections and subsections are numbered. The title references is in capital letters. Yeah, it must be in capital letters. All citations made in the text must appear in the reference list. All references must be written using the agreed style and format of the faculty under which the degree is awarded. Nowadays, there are different styles, and being very much aware of the APA style, American Psychological Association style. Yeah, you start with the surname, then the year of whatever publication, the title, the publisher, where published, and what have you. So I'm saying that a reference subsection is different from a bibliography. References include only citations that have been used in the document. Citations that have been used in the document. That's what you do, reference. But when it comes to a bibliography, on the other hand, it includes all sources one reads, whether they appear in the document or not. So, references are what is required for the proposal and dissertation in this case. Don't use bibliography. Then after references, we have another section which is appendices or annexes. So appendices start on a fresh page. Each piece of appendix is numbered and given a proper title, yes. So the full word appendix or annex is written once for appendix or annex 1, and thereafter the next number and title are listed. So the word appendix should not appear on research instruments that are to be sent out to respondents for data collection. Don't do that. The content of the appendix or annex is the back matter of the proposal. The back matter. Then in this, what are we supposed to find in these appendices? Like number 1, work plan. So appendix 1 can be work plan. In the work plan, this is the schedule or timetable of activities and the period in which the research is to be conducted or was conducted. It could be presented in a tabular or graphical form indicating activity, duration, and dates. It should be put in the appendix as an endnote. Yes. Then appendix 2 can be research budget. Yes, research budget. This is a budget for conducting the study, which should be included at the end of the proposal. You see, while the university does not fund student research directly, but it is important to learn the skill of budgeting for the study. The budget consists of research activities as line items, yes, and the estimated or actual cost of each line item. So like the examples we have here, yeah, it shows clearly subsistence, allowance, travel, vehicle hire, and quantity, the number of days, unit cost, then total cost, yeah, data analysis, use of analytical computer software, e.g. SPSS. You see, it requires funding. Secretarial services, processing the research instrument and report, whoever was typing and what have you. You see, all these must be put there. Then even if you have a map for the area where you did your research, must also be included. Then also a sample of a questionnaire can form part of the appendices. Interview schedule can form this key informant schedule can also form this part. So you would find that it is it is advisable that these are observed. And you know, if you don't observe this, you find you have not done the right thing. Then another thing I want to talk about, which students are supposed to be aware and which they are not supposed to neglect, is like some requirements, like scope and language. You see, mostly the scope of the master's thesis is 30 credits. So you may write your thesis alone or co-write it with another candidate, but the thesis shall be approximately 60 pages of core text when one candidate writes alone, or 80 pages of core text when two candidates co-write a thesis. So what am I saying here? The core text does not include the title page, forward, table of contents, reference list, and appendices. So the page limitation has been set in order to avoid paragraphs that have unnecessarily detailed descriptions and to reward thoroughly prepared and reflected text in which the analysis and interpretations of the author are expressed clearly. So you can discuss the length of the thesis with your supervisor. Yeah, that is okay. Now, when it comes to language, the language of your thesis shall be fully developed, active and grammatically correct, and the thesis shall not contain incomplete sentences that don't make meaning. You see, it's not allowed. Yeah. Then when it comes to paper quality and duplication, all copies of the thesis should be printed on good quality, preferably acid-free white paper of 80 grams per meter squared, yeah, measuring 210 by 297 millimeters. That is A4. So only single-sided copies will be accepted. Yes. Okay. Single-sided means don't type on both sides of the paper. So let us look at margins and justification. The left margin, the binding side, should be 30 millimeters, and the right top and bottom margins should be 25 millimeters. All footnotes, headings, page numbers, text, tables, and illustrations should be within these margins. So no abbreviations or acronyms should be used in the headings and in the text of the preliminary pages. So the heading should be center justified. What about font? When it comes to font size and type, a conventional font type, preferably Times New Roman, size 12 point, should be used consistently throughout the manuscript. Bold-faced letters, symbols, and italics should be used sparingly throughout the thesis. Yeah. So font size of the footnotes must be 10 points. Font size of figure, captions, and table headings must be 12 points. Font size of characters in tables and figures can be reduced down to 10 points if space limitations make it imperative. So when necessary, for example, in large volumes, all the font sizes indicated above can be reduced by 2 points. You can reduce them. What about spacing? Spacing. The thesis should be typed with 1.5 lines, 1.5 spacing. Tables, long quotations, footnotes, endnotes, bibliographies, references, and bibliography, except between entries, headings, or even subheadings, multi-line captions, and algorithms, pseudo codes, software programs should be single-spaced. What about paragraph formatting? When it comes to paragraph formatting, each paragraph should start from the left margin and 3 line spaces, what we call intention, 2 times 1.5 distance from the preceding paragraph. If a paragraph is split between pages, at least 2 lines of a paragraph must appear together at the top or bottom of a page. All headings and subheadings must be followed by at least 2 lines of a paragraph before a page break. So what am I saying? Algorithm description, should be written in single spacing using a monospaced font type as a separate paragraph and indented in its entirety at 10 millimeters from the left margin. So once you are able to achieve this, then we can say your work is ready. But as I said, before you submit your research proposal or your thesis or dissertation to your supervisor or your dean for evaluation, make sure you do thorough editing. You can give it to your colleague who will do for you what we call peer editing, because there are some mistakes that you yourself, you may fail to notice, but when you give it to someone else to look at your work before submission, then I'm sure he'll be able to give some constructive suggestions, that's comment, that will help you now to come up with a fine-tune, a final draft that is presentable and is ready for publication. So this is what I can say about this, and therefore any student, any researcher who will follow all these steps I've gone through in as far as thesis writing is concerned, then I'm sure this very student can be able to write a thesis that is publishable, something that is worth international consumption. That is what I'm calling upon my listeners, my students, my learners, not to neglect or to overlook anything. If you want to be a scholar, an academician, you follow instructions as they are. So when you do that, I don't think if you will become a nuisance to your supervisor or to your dean or even to your readers. They'll be happy, they'll appreciate your work, and they'll be complacent with you. And every time you will find they are talking to each other to refer, to make reference or citation from your work that you have done. Otherwise, I have come to the end of this course, thesis writing, and therefore I want to wish you success. I want to wish you best of luck. I want to meet you in another course that I'm just about to unleash to my learners. Otherwise, thank you and thank you very much. If you are watching this video for the first time, please just subscribe to this YouTube channel and you'll be able to be informed to receive notification about every other new video that I will be producing for the sake of our learners all over the world. Otherwise, thank you and thank you very much. May God bless you.